Hey guys, Primal Instincts here, and today I am going to talk about a couple close encounters I had, a couple brushes with death. I know it's a bit of a serious topic, but when I think about it, I just realize how lucky I am to be alive after a couple close calls I've had, and just the fact that you almost all wouldn't even know me because I wouldn't have made it to have a presence online like this. And I'm very thankful for the additional chances I've been given. And I just want to talk about them because it really is wild to hear about. And I was actually talking to my mother recently on the phone, and she said I'm like a cat with 9 lives, but I've lost a couple of them, so I need to be careful from here on out. She's absolutely right. Mother knows best, right? Well, the first scary brush with death I had was actually right on my 20th birthday. I mean, think about that. I almost barely only lived to be 20 years old. That's nowhere near a full life. It's still crazy to think back on that. And what happened is the night before my 20th birthday, I was hanging out with one of my friends and partying. And he's like, hey, I'm not going to get to see you tomorrow, so let's celebrate your birthday tonight. You're 19. It's the last day of being a teen. And that's the time in the mind state to just party, right? I knew I had to be somewhere early the next morning, but I was young and irresponsible and reckless. So I said, sure, let's do it. So we were drinking and we were smoking weed and late into the night, listening to some rap music, some Andre Nicotina. Yeah, just partying late into the night, knowing I had to wake up and go somewhere the next morning. Well, the next morning came and it was hard to get out of bed. I felt like I was still feeling the effects of the partying from the night before. And I got in my car and I was driving and I was just very tired behind the wheel. I ended up just dozing off while driving. I fell asleep at the wheel. I kept going and my car ended up smashing into a concrete wall. And I remember the shock of it just woke me up and there was just blood everywhere. And in that shock and moment of surprise, I just instinctively opened the car door and started just trying to walk away from the car and the scene. And I heard a voice across the street. So I looked over and there was this man standing outside of his car just looking at me in horror. And he's just like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I remember I just waved him off like, yeah, I'm fine. And just turned back and tried to keep walking away. And then I remember just collapsing and blacking out. And he obviously had called the police. And I'm very thankful he was there because there was not a lot of people on that street that particular morning. I probably wouldn't have made it had he not been there and called. And I really wish I would have got that guy's name so I could have thanked him down the road, but I never did. But when I woke up again, I was being raised up on a gurney on like a rope by a helicopter. I was being brought up into the sky. And I was only conscious for a couple more seconds and I blacked out again. And then when I woke up again, there were paramedics knelt over me with scissors and they were cutting my clothes off of me so they can operate on me easier and make sure they save my life. And I remember I was real stubborn because I was wearing this Black Label Society shirt. I'd seen them in concert at Ozfest and it was for one of their new albums at the time. And I thought it was a really cool shirt. And I was also wearing my favorite jeans. So I tried to ask them if they could not do that because I was wearing some of my favorite clothes. And the guy's like, I'm sorry, I have to do it. And he just cut right down my pant legs of my jeans and down the middle of my shirt. And I remember being disappointed, but, I was just being stubborn and silly. They did what they had to do. And then the next time I woke up, because I blacked out again after that, I was shaken awake by a police officer. And there was a doctor. He was sewing or stapling the wound in my head closed because I had actually cracked my head open. And that's why if you look at my hair up close, you can see I have a scar right here from that. And the police officer was like, hey, I need you to tell me what happened. I need you to tell me what happened. And I was like, the doctor is kind of looking like worried and not happy. Like, hey, this guy obviously needs rest. He just survived a fatal accident. I'm trying to like seal his head back together. The police officer's like, no, I'm not leaving till you tell me what happened. And I even tried to tell him to leave me alone and let me rest. And he kept shaking me because he didn't care. He had no empathy. All he cared about was filing his report right there on the spot. He's a prime example of why some police officers get a bad rep. But I told him, I was like, okay, fine. It was my birthday today. I was partying the night before. I fell asleep at the wheel and I hit the wall. So they ended up testing my blood and, finding substances in it. So I got charged with a DUI. I totaled my car. It was the first car I had. My parents had bought it for me for $1,000, like a maroon Chevy Cavalier from the 80s. They found it in a newspaper ad, and I destroyed it in my head. But I'm thankful to say that I haven't had any like negative effects. Like I haven't had like seizures or epilepsy or any kind of complications that I know of, like no medications or anything. I had to go back to get like the staples or, sewing. I think it was staples. I think I remember getting them in a bag as a little like, here you go. They had to remove them after a while and everything healed up. I don't have headaches or nothing like that. So I'm very lucky to be alive and not have any adverse effects. So, as if that incident wasn't bad enough, just a few months later, I was at an apartment complex, because, by now I'm 20 years old. I'm at an apartment complex, and these guys show up, and I recognize one of them, like I went to school with him, and he's like, hey, we're about to buy some weed, and we'll share it. And I'm like, yeah, cool, man, let's do it. So, the guys end up coming over, and I'm not in the room in the apartment that they're doing the deal in, and it's a very good thing. You'll find out soon enough. But you can hear something was going wrong with the deal. Like you start to hear like loud arguing, and it's just like like, hey, what's going on in there? And then you hear this like pop, 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 and then suddenly like those two guys came running out of the room and out of the apartment and ran to a vehicle and drove off. And it's just like, what just happened? And like a lot of people in the complex had heard the shots and saw people running. So like everybody's calling the police and they got there real quick and they're like asking everybody in the area what happened. And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like some guys came over, they're supposed to buy some pot. Something obviously went wrong. We heard pop, 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 pop. They ended up testing like everybody's hands for gunshot residue, and everybody cleared. Nobody had any on it because like nobody was actually in the room, and like everybody talked to the police and said like, gave descriptions and all the information they had, but it's like don't really know who they were, and they went that way. Don't know their license plate or anything like that, but they took fingerprints and but the problem is nobody was actually in the room when it happened. So I don't know if they ever got caught for it, but the scary thing is, like, had I been in that room, who knows what could have happened? Like, I could have been shot. I just survived a near fatal car accident a few months before this, and then I just unintentionally end up in this scenario where there's like people getting shot, which is not the kind of scenarios I've ever been known to hang out in. So it's like death is following me, right? It's like that movie Final Destination. It's like, okay, I lived through that, and now this is trying to come to me again. It's like, just let me live my life, please. And then, thankfully, there wasn't really anything else after that for a while. However, shortly, because this is when I lived in the Southwest. These first two things, this is when I was living in the Southwest. Shortly after I moved back up north, I was at this beautiful metro park with my cousin, and it was so nice out and such a nice, just nature, scenic area. So we're walking around shirtless and barefoot, taking pictures of the sights and taking pictures of us in nature and just having like the best time. And we ended up at the top of this waterfall that had these like rocks and this really big drop of a waterfall with like rocks at the bottom. And I'm like, ooh, I want a picture at the waterfall. And there's this little barrier that says do not cross. And I'm just like, no, I want the perfect picture. So I told my cousin, I was like, here, take a picture of me. And I step over this barrier and I go to stand at the top of the waterfall and I'm about to like strike a pose for him to take a picture. My bare foot slipped on the wet rock and I almost fell down the waterfall. I would have went all the way down into the sharp rocks at the bottom. And that was a big waterfall. There was a good chance I may not have survived a fall like that. And suffice to say, there was no picture taken. I immediately carefully stepped back over like, whoa, that was almost really bad and that was really dumb. What do you know? They put these barriers and warnings here for a reason, right? Oh, man. Yeah, like a cat, right? Just throwing away my lives one at a time. Oh. So that was probably number 3, I'd say. Encounter number 3. That one was my fault. Just being silly, not thinking straight. Oh. Things you'll do for a photo, right? Then there was one more after that. And this was shortly after I moved down south. Now I'm in the southeast. And before I ended up in this house that I bought, because the mortgage company was being a big pain and just making it as difficult as possible, drawing out the process, making it take a lot longer than it was originally intended to. So basically, I took all my stuff and moved down south, but the house wasn't mine yet because the mortgage company was tying everything up and delaying it. So one of the realtors was like, hey, I have a rental house that's in a real rural area in the middle of nowhere. I don't have anybody lined up until like a month or so. So you can just rent that out until this goes through. And I was like, okay, cool. So I end up in this like desolate, huge rental house in like the middle of nowhere. You have to drive so far just to even get to a store around there. That's how rural this area was. I really didn't like it. It was a little too lonely. I like the rural area here where the houses are spaced apart. They're not suburban, but that was real middle of nowhere kind of area. And I thankfully I didn't have to pay rent there even because the house needed a lot of repairs and he knew that I was handy because I told him how I'd fixed up my house back up north and was going to fix up the one that I was buying down south as well because it was a fixer-upper I was buying through him. And he's like, hey man, if you want to do some repairs at that house, like I'll pay you for it and you can take it off the rent. So I would end up driving real far to the nearest Lowe's, which wasn't near at all in that area, and doing a whole bunch of repairs on there. And I ended up staying there for free and making money and getting paid. So it was cool. But during one of those trips back from Lowe's, it was probably like 6 or 7 at night. Like it was to the point where it was pretty dark outside. And I was driving on this long highway, and it was like a 55 mile an hour highway. So I'm going like 55 or 60. And it was there was just a lot of trees the entire way, and they were pretty close to the street on both sides. And something just came to my mind all of a sudden. I can even call it a premonition. Seriously. I just suddenly thought, man, it's pretty dark out and there's a lot of trees, and this is a pretty fast highway at 55 miles an hour. Like, what if a deer were just to run out in the middle of the street during one of these like curves in the road? That would be bad. So I turned on my brights, and I'm not joking, just shortly after that, a couple seconds later, I see up ahead on the side of the road, there's a big buck standing there. And you know, like a lot of time deer will just like go out in the middle of the road and see you and freak out and either stand there, like stop or try to get away. No, this buck with these giant antlers did not do that. I swear it was glaring in my direction. It waited until my car was right next to where it was, and then it lowered its head so its antlers were out, and it charged forward towards me. This thing was trying to collide with me. I'm serious. And because I was going so fast, I only had enough time to instinctively turn the wheel and go into the lane that was going, opposite direction traffic to barely avoid hitting this thing. And it just kept charging across the other side of the street. And I'm just like, whoa, dude. Like, that could have been so bad. Like, I drive a hatchback. I bought the cheap, low on gas and easy maintenance minimalist car for myself. That thing, if I would have hit that buck going that fast, it would have folded up like a tin can with me in it. It would have compacted me. I don't think I would have survived that. And even worse, if there had been somebody coming the opposite way, going as fast as me, 55 or 60, that would have been a fatal head-on collision, which would have also been very bad. And I was so lucky to just suddenly have that thought at the right moment. Like, something just put it in my head, like, what if there is a deer? And had I not turned on my bright lights, I wouldn't have seen it either, because it was like positioned up and I could only see it with the top of the brights. So that was a very fast thinking decision that probably ended up saving my life. And that was like the 4th time that I could have died, and the 2nd time in a car. So I'm still nervous about driving to this day. I don't like driving on the freeway. I don't like driving over 55 miles an hour, because I'm just like, you're going really fast and people could be distracted on the road on their phone, or maybe they can have a momentary lapse of concentration, or something could happen to them while they're at the wheel, and you can end up colliding with them. And with a small car like mine, and having survived a near fatal accident and almost collided again, it's a very serious thing for me. It always makes me nervous, and I'm pretty sure it always will. But those are my stories. I survived death. I am definitely not mocking death, because death is impartial. Eventually it comes for us all. And I don't mean to be macabre with that. It's a fact. You know, I always make the joke, like, because when I was a kid, death just used to freak me out. I used to lay at night just scared, like, oh my gosh, one day I'm going to die. Like, everybody dies. But I think, like, as time goes on, the older you get, you accept that more. Not necessarily embrace it. Maybe towards the end of your life, and older age you might, but you accept it more. And now it's like, it's the last great adventure you'll get to experience. It's the great beyond. You know, like, the joke I like to make is, oh yeah, experiencing death, that's the last thing on my bucket list. And you know what? I'm going to get to experience it as the last thing on that bucket list. But thank you for listening. I like to share personal stories like this. Do you have any stories you can relate to? Are you lucky to be alive? I mean, getting second, and even, you can even say second, third, fourth, whatever, chances at life, it makes you appreciate life more. It makes you just realize that this is the one life you get to live, and you really should be living it the best you can. The healthiest, the happiest, the most stress-free. So enjoy your life. Be thankful that you have it. It is the greatest gift that we could all have, and cherish it, regardless if you've had multiple chances at life and brushes with death or not. They just make you appreciate it more. But overall, it is a gift worth cherishing. And I'm very thankful to still be here for all of you. And thank you for listening. And I will be uploading some more videos for you soon, so stay tuned.